she was so shy. Like, she literally just sat on the side of the bed with her head down, you know. But I realized what was happening, and so I kissed her, and the sun was coming up, and that was the first time we made love, and the experience was amazing. It was love. Right. I didn't know that, but it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in my life, and I was kind of scared. Like, I really felt like this was going to ruin my life.
What happens after we die? Do we still exist? And if we do, where do we go and why? For as long as human beings have walked the earth, these questions have haunted and fascinated us. They sit at the heart of every culture, at the foundation of every spiritual tradition. But what if some people could see beyond death? What if they could communicate with souls who have left this world and cross into the next? Christopher LaPrath is a uniquely gifted psychic medium. Using his psychic abilities in coordination with tarot cards, Chris can relay messages from spirit guides, departed loved ones, and other non-physical entities. In each episode of this series, I'll introduce Chris to a guest whose life has been deeply shaped by the loss of someone they love. During the conversation, Chris will attempt to contact that departed soul and any other non-physical beings who wish to come through. Death may be life's greatest mystery, but sometimes it answers back. Today's guest is Ronnie Pontiac.
Doesn't mean I didn't try.
Ronnie was born in Southern California to war refugee parents who had barely survived the Nazis. Picked on and bullied throughout his youth, Ronnie's life turned very dark. Until he was saved by a woman who Ronnie thought he was saving. With Tamara at his side, Ronnie's entire life turned around. Together, they created music, literature, and art. Ronnie's unique energy even caught the attention of legendary mystic Manly P. Hall, who asked Ronnie to be his personal assistant and who in many ways became Ronnie and Tamara's spiritual mentor. But above all else, Ronnie and Tamara's life together is a powerful, timeless love story. And that's what this episode is about.
Oh, you can't put your arms around a memory.
Ronnie Pontiac, thank you so much for being with us on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is going to be interesting.
Definitely.
I've invited you because you have an incredible love story to tell, and we are going to explore that through the help of a psychic medium. But let's just start first by telling me a little bit about who you are and where you're from. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and my parents were war refugees.
From World War II, I'm assuming?
Yes.
And were they concentration camp refugees?
My father was a concentration camp refugee. He was one of the few children that survived. He demonstrated to the German guards that he could work. And so they let him work in a factory. He was a slave because most kids were just immediately gassed.
Oh my God. And your mother, what was her
She
war story?
survived in the Warsaw Ghetto, and at first she survived by crawling around trying to find food, scavenging in basements.
Right.
She was ultimately caught, and there was an SS colonel who took a fancy to her even though she was a child. And so she became his mistress in a sense. She was trafficked. And then when they were retreating, she was grabbed by the Russians, and so she went through outrages there. And she figured out that she could volunteer for nursing training for the Red Army.
Okay, so you have a loaded ancestry.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Almost my entire family was wiped out. They were amongst the few survivors. And they both came to Los Angeles, strangely. They were people who never really learned to trust Americans or anybody. They were atheists, and they waited a really long time to have me. I don't think, in fact, later in life, my father said to me, "Your mother and I have talked, and we think it was a mistake to have had you."
I think the main point here is it was probably a fairly challenging upbringing.
It was a strangely star-crossed beginning. I was a runt. I was born prematurely, and then I spoke with an accent for maybe my first 10 years because I was raised by people who spoke with a heavy accent.
Right.
So that attracted a lot of the wrong kind of attention at school.
And was it a volatile household? Like, was there...
Oh, yeah. Well, they were constantly fighting, and they were both constantly sick because of what they'd gone through. They would go through these long silences, and they would send me in between them to deliver messages.
Because they weren't talking to each other.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a really rough environment to grow up in. You know, you're a kid, your parents have had terrible childhoods themselves. And so where did this take you in your life?
Well, I realized when I was taught in school about the social contract, I realized I didn't have one because at home I was not really treated well.
Right.
And at school I was beat up all the time because I was this freaky foreign kid.
Right.
So
and you were smaller than maybe the other kids.
I was kicked up a grade, so that didn't help.
Not only were you smaller, then you were smart, and so they kicked you up a grade, so you're just going to be even more standout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I realized since I don't have a social contract as I hit my teens.
Wait, I just want to back up. So by social contract, you're referring to the ideas of the Renaissance and John Locke, the social contract?
Essentially, that if the society has taken care of me, my family has taken care of me, so therefore
you have to give back.
I have to give back. And
right.
I felt like no one took care of me, so I don't need to give back.
You owe nobody nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And none of the rules applied as far as I was concerned.
Right.
So I started out simple with shoplifting, and I realized the power of lying,
right.
which was very powerful. And then by the time I hit like around age 17, 18, I was really nihilist. I was racist. I was violent. I was displaying all kinds of criminal behavior. And I wanted to front a band. And I wanted the band to be just the ultimate in darkness. Like I thought that people like Jim Morrison were posers, that you know, Alice Cooper and Iggy and all of them were just entertainers.
Right. You wanted to be the real darkness.
Thing. Exactly. And I found, to my shock, not only musicians who shared that and who for a little time until they realized how crazy I was, they supported me unconditionally. But I found a big audience of people who were hateful, frustrated people who recognized in my anger
they really tapped
their
into
own
it.
anger. And ultimately, partially through the criminal activities I was involved in.
Wait. Your band and you were involved in criminal activities. Now, I don't want you to incriminate yourself.
Just the band. I mean, just me, not the band.
Not the band.
Yeah,
okay.
not the band. They were okay.
What kind of criminal activities?
I don't want to get into it.
Okay.
It was bad.
It was bad stuff.
Yeah, this wasn't like kid stuff.
Okay.
I was involved in some pretty bad things.
Were you working independently, or were you working with crime organizations? Or
I started out independently, and then I never really worked for anybody, but I had certain powers as somebody who had a following and had a lot of people around me. So I was able to take advantage of that.
I'm not sure what that means. Do I want to know, or do you want to tell me, or no?
I won't go into it.
Okay. Okay, so you've developed a really dark side to you. You're expressing it through your music. You're sort of creating a little bit of a following because there are a lot of people in the world who gravitate towards that message because they're experiencing a lot of the same turmoil and pain that you're in.
You know, in the beginning, it was very empowering.
Yeah.
To go from being somebody who was just beat up all the time to somebody who had guest lists that said anyone wearing the colors of the Satan's slaves or the devil's henchmen, and they were like our security. So that was powerful for me to be.
Wait, what do you mean they were? Were those the names of bouncers?
Biker gangs.
Biker gangs. Satan's slaves and the devil's henchmen were the two gangs that were working for you guys as...
Not really working for us,
informally,
but they liked what we were doing. And I liked them because there was a code of honor amongst them that was different than what you would see almost anywhere else in life, where there was gossip and competition and backstabbing. You couldn't really do that in that world, so that appealed to me.
Because there was this code of honor. You can't screw over your brother, basically.
Yeah, it was like an outlaw code.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so So you've got these henchmen, sort of, or these bikers who are part of your world.
Yeah.
You're doing shows. You're suddenly having this experience of being. It's like must have felt like you found your place in the world a little bit. Like, oh, here I am. People are responding to me.
In a way, I mean, I was certainly at that point. I was already drinking myself to death, and I planned to be dead before I was 30. As my future wife Tamara would say, "Ew, 30." But that's how I was. I just thought I don't want to be around that long. But while I'm here, I'm going to spread all the bad news that I can.
And your thought was, when I'm dead, that's the end of it, and there was no life after or anything like that?
I thought that the world was a jungle. It was nonsensical. I thought humanity sucked, and I thought that there was nothing spiritual and no God.
Yeah. That sounds like a heavy place to be. And clearly it was having its toll on you. Mm-hmm. Although in a way, in your darkness, you were flourishing.
It by gaining that power, it actually put me in the right position for my life to turn into something beautiful.
Ah, yeah, of course. It pushed you so far to the side. So the thing that pushed your life into something beautiful, which is really the reason we're here today to talk about it, tell us the story of what saved you.
So the guitar player in the band quickly figured out I can't stay around these maniacs. Like, I would just want to make some money and have girlfriends, and these people are dangerous.
Right.
So he quit the band.
Right.
So my drummer, who was a violent person but not a criminal,
right,
he showed up one day at my door and he said, "We got to go find him and force him back into the band."
Because you needed a guitarist, good guitarist. Yeah,
and he was good.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "How do we do that?" And he said, "We'll tell him if he doesn't rejoin the band, we'll break his fingers." And I thought, that might work. And so we went to this notorious club hoping that he was there. He was usually there.
And that was within your code of behavior. A threat like that wasn't a big deal?
We figured that we had given him success. He'd been this complete,
so he owed his fingers to you in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So it was pretty twisted.
Okay.
So he was usually at the club. We went down there on April 1st on a rainy night, and he wasn't there.
And this is another music club where there are bands playing and things?
No, this was just a hangout bar.
Hangout bar,
yeah.
Okay.
And I shouldn't have even been there. I wasn't legally old enough, but I'd already been going there for a couple of years.
Yeah, and you're already drinking yourself nearly to death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that club was really just a place for people to hook up, musicians and girls.
Right.
And we weren't there for that reason, and we stood out because we were scowling at everybody. And well, there was a girl there who I noticed, and she seemed like she didn't belong there. You could tell by the way she was dressed, her whole demeanor, that this was somebody that had never been in this kind of environment. And she had apparently attracted the attention of these 5 guys, this band. Really was the fault of the person that she came with, a friend of hers, who kind of left her with these people. And they correctly surmised that she had been abused. She had been kidnapped when she was 15 and almost beaten to death, and only escaped because she grabbed the wheel when she was being driven to a graveyard and tried to kill herself and the attacker, and he'd scared him, so he let her go.
Okay, so hold on a second. So the woman that you see at this club, which is it's a bit of a downward place, a little bit seedy. It's
seedy. Very seedy.
Very seedy, okay. Kind of a pickup place. The woman you see that stands out is, let's just give her a name. It's Tamara, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Tamara.
Yes.
Now, she's come with this guy who has left her with this. Oh, she's come with a girl who has left her with this group of guys who are sensing, because certain people can sense if you've been abused. An abuser can sense that and then can take advantage of it, even if it's non-verbal. If it's just so, these guys have sensed that they've got a wounded animal in their midst, and you're also letting us know that the wound that Tamara had was specifically coming out of an incident when she was how old?
15.
When she was 15 years old, she was kidnapped.
Yes.
And she was taken. Was she sexually abused?
Badly beaten.
And badly beaten. And she was being taken to a graveyard to be killed and deposited there. And she escaped somehow How did she escape?
She grabbed the wheel as he was driving and tried to steer them into oncoming traffic.
To kill both of them.
And that scared him, and so he let her out.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Did they ever catch that guy?
No.
Okay. Poor Tamara.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she carried that burden. Here she is in this situation. God knows how she got herself into it. She followed the advice of a friend and was now stuck in it. Mm-hmm. You're sort of seeing this play out from a distance in a way?
Yeah, I noticed what was happening, but I didn't want to get involved.
Right.
And she was watching me as somebody that she thought might be someone she could ask for help.
She somehow clued in on you, thinking, I'm in trouble, this guy might help me, even though you're a total stranger.
Yes.
And can I just say, at this time, not a particularly nice guy either.
She said I looked like an anime villain.
An anime villain?
Yeah, but for some reason she felt that there was something in me. And so she was even warned. The club manager saw her looking at me. He walked up to her and he said, you look like a nice girl. Don't talk to that guy. He's dangerous.
Wow. Warned against you, but there was something in her telling her you were the guy that was going to help her. Mm-hmm. And you think she was legitimately in trouble with these five guys?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Did you know these guys at all?
No.
But you could tell they had bad intent.
They were like, when she would try to get away from them, they were kind of triangulating her. They were whispering to each other. You could see them they'd be plotting, and then she'd turn around and look at them and they'd all smile.
Right.
It was obvious that something was going on.
And what's your thinking at this point in your life, because you're not necessarily, a knight in shining armor, what's your thinking about your concern for this person?
I had none at that point.
Yeah.
I just watched what was happening, and it was just typical. That's the club. These are the kind of people.
That's the world, though.
That's why I'm
That's
hateful.
Your whole worldview.
Yeah, exactly. This is just proof of why I'm who I am.
Yeah. So then what happens?
Well, as it became 2 a.m. and she realized there was no escape, she found me standing outside in the rain smoking this Black Russian cigarette and watching everybody. And she walks up to me. And poor thing, I just remember her blue eyes. She was just so scared. And she looked up at me and she said, please help me, I'm in trouble.
She knew she was in trouble.
Yeah. And I said, what's going on?
But she knew what was going on.
Yeah, but I still was.
Yeah.
So she explained to me what was happening and that she was really afraid that they were going to do something to her.
Right.
Something woke up in me. I felt a chivalry almost about this poor girl, the innocence, the fear. And then I was watching them watching me, and they were trying to posture, and that pissed me off.
They were trying to scare you off, like, don't fuck with our prey, basically, and these are probably badass guys, right?
I don't know. They seemed to me like kind of I call them the mainstream dreamers. That's what they looked like to me, like people who had come into town to make it,
Oh, I see.
And so I told her to hold on, and I went to get my drummer. And
because he's a badass.
Yeah. And so she thought I was ditching her. She thought, oh my God, I tell him this stupid story that I got myself in trouble. Why should he listen?
Right.
But I came back. And they were pissed. You could see that when I was standing there with my drummer, and I took my cigarette and I threw it in the ground, and I looked at them while I was squashing it, and they knew what I was saying. And Tamara
so it's all nonverbal at this point. You're squashing out your cigarette with your foot, looking at them, basically sending them the message, don't fuck with this girl, I'm taking care of her.
Yeah.
And you've got your drummer next to you.
Yeah. So they still thought it's 5-2.
Yeah.
So what happened was Tamara was in this car that's leaving this busy parking lot. I had my car. I tried to get behind her, but they got between us. And there was a light when you left.
Hold on. So Tamara, so you figure, okay, we're going to make our escape, and you help Tamara get in her car, and you get in your car. Is your drummer with you?
Yes.
Okay. And you're just going to follow her until she's safe. That's the plan. Yeah. And you've talked to her about this.
Yeah.
Okay. But as you're trying to execute this plan, they're in their car and they cut you off or basically get in between you.
Yeah. So there was a light that you had to wait for in order to get out of the parking lot. And what they did was, when it turned green, Tamara took off and they waited. They waited till it turned red, and then they took off. But I was not somebody that was too concerned about traffic
Staying
laws, so
traffic
I
laws.
just went into it, and there was screeching and honking horns, and I pulled up and tailgated them so they could see my face, and I was just like, man, you fucked with the wrong motherfucker. And so
At this point, you're angry, probably.
oh yeah, now it was really personal.
And were you capable of doing harm to them?
Yes.
So your threats weren't idle.
No.
Okay.
So then I knew I had to stay with her
Yeah.
because they were following wherever she went.
Didn't she know to like hang back so you could catch up to her?
No, but she was the first car, so she started.
She didn't realize you weren't behind her.
Yeah, well, she knew I was behind them
Somewhere, okay.
but she thought they would go.
I see.
She didn't realize what they could do.
Right.
So we got to this apartment building that her brother managed, and
Tamara pulls up to her apartment building.
it's a place where she can stay with her brother, but
Okay.
unfortunately her brother wasn't there.
Okay.
So as she was unlocking the door, and they were right there, they pulled up and they came up behind her, and they were all standing there. So I stepped up and I stood next to her as she unlocked the door. And I had a feeling that I'd never felt before in my life. I still remember like it was yesterday. I felt like I belonged there, and I never felt like I belonged in the world.
You belonged with this person.
With her.
And you felt like suddenly this sense of belonging.
Yeah, and I just felt like, I don't know, it was this chemistry or something. It was this strange feeling of rightness. And
It's a beautiful feeling to have, but I'm worried about you because you've got 5 guys who could just sort of overpower you at any moment. Is your drummer still with you?
yes.
Okay, so that helps a little.
Yeah, so it was also bad in a way for me because I didn't believe in love, and I had this like operation going where I had different girls on different nights, and they would bring me food and money and liquor, and that's how I was surviving.
Right.
So the feeling that I felt, which I didn't recognize as love, but I did recognize it was something unique.
Right.
It made me uneasy.
Right.
And so we went upstairs into this place and sat on the couch, and there was a view over the city from this place. It was an empty apartment. And they were drinking in the kitchen. They brought like a 6-pack of beer with them.
Wait, who's they?
The 5 guys. And so Tamara and I were sitting on a sofa looking out the window.
Wait, I'm confused. How did these guys get into her apartment?
Oh, they just pushed their way in. They weren't, I turned around and was like, you're not welcome here. And they just went right in. And we weren't willing to fight at that point. So I just thought, I'll just stick with her and make sure that she's okay. And they didn't listen to her when she said, you guys aren't welcome here. They laugh it off.
Right.
It's like, ha, you guys are funny,
Right.
that kind of thing.
And no one would think to call the cops or anything like that.
No. What would you say? That these guys were looking at her funny?
Yeah,
Like there was no real, they hadn't done anything. They were just
they forced themselves into the apartment, but
yeah, but this was a party town. It was nighttime. We're coming from a club. It was just felt like party time.
Okay, so you're in this apartment. You're sitting next to this woman who, for the first time in your life, has induced a feeling which you can't name, love, sense of belonging. And there are these 5 guys who are threatening her. What happens?
Well, so we talked for several hours while they were drinking. They were kind of plotting over in the kitchen, waiting for us to leave, I guess. And she was talking.
Did you have a weapon?
No.
Okay.
And she was talking to me about her boyfriend, who she'd been with for 3 years since high school. And he had this great job. He got out of high school at 19, got a job in the studios, bought a house. And I was hearing her. What I was hearing was, I'm not a punk girl. I'm not a rock and roll girl. Like, I don't do these things. Please, protect me.
Right.
And I also thought to myself, man, I've sunken low. Like, I'm protecting some other guy's girlfriend. Like, that is not me.
So you're feeling love on some level, or maybe was that just outside the apartment that you had that sensation, or are you still feeling connected to this woman in some way that you can't explain?
I felt connected enough to want to protect her, but
Right.
I also thought, this is so typical, like, there's this kind of girl, they always hate me. And of course they do. Look at me, I'm this evil.
Yeah. And you're kind of saying to yourself, what am I doing with this girl who's not even in my world, who's got a boyfriend, and this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yet there's something inside you saying, I'm going to protect her.
Yeah. Eventually they made their move.
These 5 guys who have pushed their way into the apartment and have been drinking and plotting make their move.
Yeah. So they just kind of step into the room and they start to say to her, well, we know why you brought us here. And, we can give you such a good time. Like, why don't we get busy? What are we waiting for?
Trying to fuck with her.
Right, that kind of thing. And she turned around and looked at me with such terror. Yeah. Because she knew that if I switched on her or if I decided to wash my hands of it, she was done.
And is the drummer still there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He was just silently sitting there looking pissed off.
Okay. And does he have a weapon?
No.
Okay.
And so it really made me angry the way they were talking to her. They were making it seem as though she was just pretending that she was afraid and that really she just wanted to get gangbanged, and that's why they were all there.
Which is the abusive mentality that they're tapping into that they had sensed. Yeah.
Exactly. So I stood up and I said, "Shut the fuck up." And so then they turned their attention to me and they said, "Hey, there's 5 of us and there's 2 of you." And my drummer stood up. And then I looked at them really hard and I said, "Shut the fuck up." Uh-huh. And Tamara said that there was like this aura of violence around me and my drummer, which there would be.
Yeah.
It wasn't like normal, like guys getting a fight over a girl. Like this this wasn't right. Like, right. And they could sense it. Yeah. And so then they tried to bargain. They were like, "Well, you guys can go first." Really made me mad. So I just made fists and I was like, "Come on." You
were so mad you actually were ready to fight.
Oh yeah.
Did you fight a lot with your fists? I mean, was that something that you did?
I could fight, yeah. And he was an incredible fighter. And I was a dirty fighter. I tried to hurt people. I wasn't like, "I'm going to give you a black eye." Like, you were going to remember me. Yeah. And so they got scared. Yeah. They could tell that we were very serious and that we had this bad vibe, So they left.
This is such a great story. I mean, you're like a superhero. I mean, you're evil.
I'm an evil superhero.
But this is incredible. So they left, and what was Tamara's reaction?
Well, I said to her, "Are you okay now? Can we go?" And she said, "No." She said, "They could be watching. I'm afraid." Yeah. And I thought, that they probably are. Yeah. So I said, "What do you want to do?" And she said, "Well, where do you live?" Right. And I said, "I don't live far from here. I live up above Sunset." And she said, "Can I come back to your place for a few hours until my brother gets home? Yeah. And then I'll come back here and I'll be safe." Right. And I was like, "Okay, if you want to come back to my place." And I lived in this, it was like a closet. It was this tiny little bachelor. Yeah. I gave her a blanket and a pillow because I was protecting her. I wasn't going to hit on her. Right. I was just, and she was very quiet, and my drummer just fell asleep on the sofa, and I went to bed.
Was the drummer there for protection, or was the drummer there just because he had nowhere else to crash?
Go. Yeah, exactly. And so she kind of softly knocked on this. There was no door. There was a little curtain. Was my door, and there was a little column, and she kind of just softly knocked on it. And I said, "The bathroom's over there." But she didn't go to the bathroom. She walked in and she sat on the corner of my bed. But she was so shy. Like she seemed like she was ashamed almost. Like she literally just sat on the side of the bed with her head down, But I realized what was happening, and I thought, wow, I'm getting rewarded for my chivalry. Right. And so I kissed her, and the sun was coming up, and that was the first time we made love, and the experience was amazing. It was love. Right. I didn't know that, but it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in my life, and I was kind of scared. Like I really felt like this was going to ruin my life, and.
Well, your whole support system is going to go out the window because all these women who are just sort of like taking care of all your needs.
Yeah, and you can't be hateful and filled with anger and front a band with that energy if you're in love,
That's
so
true.
I was in denial. I was just, no, this is just, it's just really good sex.
Because your whole life is built on not the opposite of love, on darkness and hate and anger. Mm-hmm. And this one person is about to turn your whole world upside down, and you know that. Mm-hmm. But here she is.
Yeah. So she went home, and her brother's lover, who'd just come back from surfing, he said, "Wow, you look like you had a great time." And she said, "I think I just met the love of my life." Oh. And so I didn't know, but she had my number. She called me. I took her out on a date. and I was using some other girl's money to buy her a chocolate souffle. I didn't even have enough money to eat. I just sat there drinking. And she was so cute. She
wait. How long after your first night together is this?
Maybe 2 nights, maybe like a day or two after. I wanted to see her again.
Yeah, she called you up.
Yeah.
And then you made an arrangement, and you took her out for a chocolate souffle on borrowed money or stolen money. I'm not sure.
This was borrowed.
Borrowed money.
And so and she was so cute. She'd like curl up her hair and wore this out. And she looked kind of goofy. Like it really wasn't, she looked better just herself. But it was so cute.
She was trying to make herself up.
Yeah, exactly. And then that second experience with her was even more amazing.
Wow.
And then it started to happen. Like I would be with other women and I would just feel like I don't want to be with this person. Like I want to be with Tamara. Like where's Tamara?
Yeah.
And then it got even worse because then I'm in rehearsal and I'm like, oh man, I don't even want to be in rehearsal. Like I've lost all my mojo.
Right.
And I was just Tamara. And so 2 weeks after meeting her, I approached her with such solemnity that she thought I was breaking up with her. And
but you're breaking up with your old life is what you're doing.
Yeah, and also I thought there's no way, like I was going to ask her to move in with me, and I just thought she's with a guy she's been with for 3 years, he's got a job, they've got a house, like forget it. I mean, I'm a scumbag she's having a wild fling with.
Yeah.
And to my shock, she said, yeah, I would love to move in with you. And I was the happiest I've ever felt in my life up until that point. And she also told me later that she had written 2 weeks earlier in her journal, there is no such thing as true love. So she
2 weeks prior to meeting you.
Yeah. So that was...
She was going down that path too.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, there it was. And in this bizarre way. So you can see that becoming that person, that evil person, is how I was in the right position with the right presence to have her choose me and then to have this amazing change happen in my life.
That's incredible. So Tamara enters your life and what happens?
I was very feral, and so she started to teach me how to be a civilized human being. Like, have you ever flossed your teeth? And she would say to me, you lie a lot. Isn't that hard to remember? Just these wonderful little pieces of advice about improving life. And I lost my will to be angry and hateful. So the band ended. Obviously, the other relationships ended. And so then other aspects of life opened up for us.
Right.
We began to have a spiritual life. And from that point, we spent 46 years together every single day, working on everything that we did together.
So she moved in. And you guys were basically together every moment, or largely every moment of your life from that point on.
Yes, we were this weird kind of thing where normally people fall in love and they're infatuated and then it evens out.
Yeah.
We stayed infatuated with each other for 46 years.
Wow. And you ended up falling into these jobs that were with incredible people like Manly P. Hall and doing spiritual things and creating other art, which was uplifting and beautiful. And
it's like a switch turned on, and I went from the world as a horrible place to if the world could make a Tamara, then it can't be all that bad. And then as I opened up that way, mentors showed up, and especially Manly Hall, who really civilized me and educated me and gave me opportunities to prove that I was someone that I didn't know I was.
Wow. And that's a whole story in and of itself. So Tamara's no longer with us. Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry because it's fairly recent. Mm-hmm. Tell us what happened. Like what was that?
Well, we had an incredible life together. She was always healthy. She never saw a doctor for over 40 years. And then in July of 2025, she suddenly became ill one day. And there was 5 days of decline at home. I found her non-responsive on the 5th day. I had to perform CPR while the ambulance arrived. Then she was in the hospital. She recuperated very quickly, and they told me it was a miraculous healing.
From what?
She had, how can I say this briefly? This is a woman who spent her life fighting bullies. Mm-hmm. And this is a woman whose careers in film and in music and in writing were about empowering people who were traumatized. And many of the causes that she championed were destroyed very quickly after the second election of our current president. So she had been very deeply involved in choice. She'd been very deeply involved in preventing the pipeline at Standing Rock. All these things that she had spent her life to create were wiped out, one after the other. And she could not find a way to respond. Our band was gone because no one could afford to live in L.A. There were no films being made. She couldn't get anything organized. And
so her whole life purpose had sort of like imploded. All the things that were important to her, all the things that she had fought for and created had just sort of blown up.
Yes, and she was exhausted after a lifetime of being a warrior. And so she was not eating well, she was not sleeping well, and her anxiety was very strong. And I was trying to get her to eat, trying to get her to find ways to enjoy life and to enjoy being with me. But her sense of justice was so violated, and her desire to do something was so strong that it eventually depleted her. And what I was told at the hospital was that she had the lowest level of electrolytes of anybody that had ever been admitted. So it had shut down her brain, which shut down her heart.
The state of the world became too much for her, and it just...
The state of the world and her inability to find a way to respond to it, to do what she'd always done for almost 5 decades of fighting. And now suddenly there was no fight. And
she couldn't find a foothold to fight from.
What?
And so she went to the hospital, they recuperated her to some extent, she had a miraculous recovery, and then what happened?
They told me that she was going to be home in a couple of days, and then they performed a test on her, and they punctured one of her inner organs, and they weren't sure which one. She was in a very weakened state, and she was bleeding internally, and before they could even get a CAT scan, she was gone.
I'm so sorry. Wow. And this is, from the date that we're recording this is less than a year ago.
Yes, it's about 9 months.
Wow. This is the person you were with for 46 years, kind of attached at the hip, and, was the foundation of your entire, not just metamorphosis, but your entire life. Wow.
Yeah.
And how are you handling it?
Well, in the beginning, I was in utter despair. Of course, it was 10 days, the shock, and I had thought she would be home any minute, so it was even more shocking. And she was someone that I spent my whole life like writing her magic and helping her to do the things that she did. Because when I met her, she was shy, she thought she was stupid. She turned out to be brilliant and to be this fearless leader, providing safe spaces and lifting other traumatized young women into careers as filmmakers, as musicians, as authors. And I was just along for this incredible ride with her, helping her do all these things. And I lived to please her. I lived to see her happy and every day to find ways to make her feel a sense of delight.
And then
suddenly nothing, no purpose in life. And I didn't know how I was going to deal with things like cremation and death certificates, and I had a liminal experience 1 week later on a Monday morning at dawn, where I can only describe it as it was like she got on top of me. All I saw was light. It wasn't a dream. I got little glimpses of her hair and her shoulder, which may have been my own subconscious furnishing this recognition, and it felt like it was like a 20-minute mutual orgasm is the only way to describe it. It was just this ecstasy that went on and on. There was no speech. And when it was over, I was just in bliss. And she had left me with this very clear sense that things like her ashes were trivial, that things like paperwork and dealing with the lawyers and such was nothing, that her living soul was living, she's still with me, and that there was this, you clean up after the party.
Clean up after the party. So that's just the ashes and everything is just cleaning up after the party, but the experience is real and it didn't end. It's still here. When did that experience happen where you felt her presence?
A week after she passed.
Yeah. And you have actually been sensing her, or other people have been sensing her in and around your world?
It's been amazing, because the last book that we worked on was about life after death, and about this deeply romantic couple who had explored it together. And the woman in that couple, Betty, had died just before their book was published, very suddenly, just like Tamara. And they were very similar people.
Yeah.
And so it was eerie. It was like history rhymes, as Mark Twain says.
Yeah. Okay, so we're having this conversation now. Next week, we're going to be joined by Christopher, who's going to open up open up his channels and see what comes through. And thank you so much for participating in this. It's an incredible story, and I'm so interested. And I have to say, kind of excited to see where it goes. I hope that I hope that's respectful of the grief that you're in.
Thank you. I have found that the messages that she has sent through other people, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to have that connection, but it doesn't make up for the loss of the physical self. And so all the beautiful things that we take for granted, like when you come home and somebody you love sees you and their face lights up, and just so many things every day that remind me of how empty my life is since she left.
Yeah, and yet I think you and Tamara are not separated for long.
That's how I deal with each day.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll see you next week, and we'll see what happens.
Yes, I look forward to it.
Try to knock some sense.
On the next episode.
I mean, when you pulled the Empress card, I just thought...
Me too, because that's what I saw when you pulled the Empress card. The second you turned it, I was like, oh, the Empress is here. Tamara is here.
Yeah, I actually got tears in my eyes. For
yeah, I've got tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
They let you know. Oh, you can't put your arms around a memory. You can't put your arms around a memory. You can't put your arms around a memory. Don't try. No. Don't try.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to Realization Lab on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
With me.